Assalamu alaikum. Hopefully everyone's well. You can hear me well. Just setting up and we'll start by God's permission. Salam, Sister Meow, Brother Omar.
Hello and morning. Salam.
Okay. Okay, Assalamu alaikum. Hope everyone's well. Today we are continuing with part 2 of the Qur'an study analysis for Surah 1. Last time we went over kind of the theme of the surah as a prayer for guidance, basically. The connections of the surah basically to Tawheed, if you will, in terms of its structure, how it begins with praising God, attributing all praise to God, how it follows with basically declaring one's orientation as serving God alone, and how it follows from that to asking God for guidance upon serving Him alone. And then we also touched a bit at the end about the closing verse and the path of those who you have delighted upon, not the path of those who angers upon, and not the astray. And we discussed a bit about the attributes and which groups, not which groups, but like what these two names tell us. So we're picking up here. I have some more prompts from the AI where I go through the kind of logic or structure of the surah. So I'm looking forward to that as well. So, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. We'll start by reading the surah in English. In the name of God, the Gracious, the Merciful. The praises God's Lord of the beings, the Gracious, the Merciful, Ruler of the day of dew. You we serve and you we ask for help. Guide us to that bright path, the path of those you delighted upon, not of those who angers upon, basically, and not the astray. So if there are no thoughts before we get started, I'll move back to the ChatGPT window. So I'd been talking a bit last time about how, to me, when I read the surah, I see it more so there's an initial praising of God at the beginning, and then it's followed by praying to God directly by His names, by His attributes, the gracious, the merciful, owner of the day of judgment, you we serve and you we ask for help. So we call upon Him by His grace and mercy, by His authority, His total rule of judgment, and then we declare based on His mercy and His might, basically, that you we serve and you we ask for help. So for me, kind of verse 5 follows from those two. From His mercy and His might, we serve Him alone and ask Him alone for help. And the AI basically also adds, connected to this point, His gracious mercy is the source from which guidance, help, forgiveness, and favor are sought. And He alone owns or rules the day of judgment. Therefore, 5 is not just a declaration of your devotion, but a rational response to the two divine realities immediately before it. Since mercy belongs decisively to God, and final authority belongs decisively to God, therefore service and reliance belong exclusively to God, or are declared exclusively to God. So any thoughts connected to this idea? Then moving on, I did make also a prompt about the concept of the kind of incongruity between some of the language in the last verse, where God says, the way of those who you an'amta alayhim, you delighted upon them or blessed upon them, not al-maghdubi alayhim. So God said, not of those who anger is upon them, rather than to say in the same exact way, not of those who you were angry upon. So it kind of makes it implicit or removes God as the actor, at least in the language. So it says it could have been غَيْرِ الَّذِينَ غَضَبْتَ عَلَيْهِمْ. And we have similar phrases in the Quran elsewhere. غَضَبَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَعَنَّهُم. God was angry with them and cursed them. So sometimes we have it like that, but in this case, we don't have الَّذِينَ غَضَبْتَ عَلَيْهِمْ, those who you were angry upon. Rather, we just have those who anger is upon. And similarly, we ask God, ihdina, guide us. And then it doesn't say not of those who you astrayed, as it says elsewhere in the Quran sometimes. But in this case, it says just the astray. So God is sought for guidance. And then we have this one, the astray, being without God, explicitly. So I thought this is noteworthy, obviously, in both cases. And I think I just asked the AI without explaining what my thought on it. So it says that the positive path is explicitly a path of divine giving. Guidance, favor, delight, and blessing are not self-produced achievements, they are bestowed by God. But then you have the wrath, it says, as an objective state, where the actor is not explicitly named, it says, given the context, the wrath is obviously connected to God's judgment, but the wording does not directly say those who you were angry upon. So this subtlety basically creates the effect that delight, favor, and guidance basically is delight, favor, and guidance is attributed to God's bestowal, while wrath appears as the state, it says, of a path gone wrong, but really I would say the state without God's guidance, the state without God's bestowal. So to summarize a bit, anamta alayhim, those who God delighted upon or favored upon. Al-maghdubi alayhim, those who wrath is upon or anger is upon passively. And then al-dalin, the astray, as a name, but again without an actor, just as a characteristic, contrasted against ihdina, which is guidance being sought from God.
Basically, one of them is a past participle, or rather past passive participle, and the other one is an adjective. That's
Yeah, mashallah. Any other thoughts connected to this point?
Yes, Assalamu alaikum. Do you hear me?
Walaikum salam. Yeah.
Brother, very good analysis, but I would just wanted to add another dimension. So what you're saying is correct, but there is another implication of the different usage of مغضوب عليهم instead of الذين غضب الله عليهم. Could you go up just a little bit? Brother, the other thing that you understand from al-maghdub alayhim, it means it's not just God who is angry against them. It's also al-malaikati wal-nasi ajma'in. أولئك جزاؤهم أن عليهم لعنة الله والملائكة والناس أجمعين. So al-maghdub alayhim, it implements as well that it is not only God who is angry upon them, but there's a collective, including God, the angels, and the people who are cursing them. So the believers are able to see that there are people who are angered upon and those who are astray. Thank you.
Mashallah, very good point, mashallah, because there's the verse that you referenced that those who denied God's curse is upon them and the angels and the people collectively. So just like the curse, the anger of God is upon them, they're angry with themselves in the fire. God is displeased with them, and basically nobody's pleased with them. Then the next point, I think I'd already stated this, which was that basically in this surah as a prayer, we're asking God for guidance. And the default without God's guidance is astrayness. Similarly, without God's favor, the default is wrath. So in both astrayness and anger, you have basically the absence of God. This was the point I was making earlier, but just to state it a bit differently. it kind of makes the point that you need God's guidance, and without God's guidance, you are necessarily astray. And basically, the surah is us acknowledging that we need God's guidance and therefore asking Him for it. Then there's another connection, or not connection, but kind of point to take it further, where you have those who God guided, and you have those who God did not guide, who are the astray. Without God's guidance, they're the astray and such. But they have something in common, which is that they are all under God's rule. So, I think I said here, so the fact that they remain under God's rule, but not in His favor, without Him bestowing it upon them, or them seeking it from Him, is what necessitates the anger upon them. So these concepts, I think, connect like sequentially. He is the ruler of the Day of Judgment. You're under His rule. You need Him for guidance and for favor. And if you don't, and without Him, you don't receive guidance nor favor. And without the favor, that necessitates anger upon you, since you are under His rule. Like in verse 5, the person you serve and you ask for help, the person acknowledges, since based on God's mercy and His rule of the Day of Judgment, they accept, or how to put it, like they orient themselves to worship God alone and to seek Him for help. But those who do not take that position to serve God alone and seek Him for help, they're still under God's rule. They don't seek guidance from Him, therefore they don't receive guidance because there's no alternative source. They don't seek favor from Him, therefore they don't ultimately receive favor, because there's no alternative source. And therefore the anger befalling them is necessity, since they're under God's rule, they're in God's system and cannot escape that. Because it's true. Hopefully it's clear. Any thoughts to add to this idea?
Yes, I do. I'd like to refer back to Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. So since Allah, if we implement that Allah is the source of all mercy, the most merciful, so it is only if you have been angered upon that He would not give you the mercy. So you pray that you are not among those who do not receive His mercy, and also because you witness people how they act and how what their fate is when they are misguided. Yes, right.
MashaAllah, very good point.
Now what you're saying here is sorry. Now what you're saying here is that there is not just a lot of praise, but also a lot of recognition in the first verses prior to asking. Am I getting you right?
Yeah, the orientation that you're declaring, you we serve and you we ask for help, is following from your recognition of God and his attributes. And then your asking for guidance is following from your declared orientation. So it all follows like sequentially.
Praising God as um, precondition for supplicating to him. So ask him by his most beautiful names, or call him by his most beautiful names, and recognizing his authority as following, is like being in a state of submission, authority, and therefore serving him.
Also implying the first commandment to take no partners besides him. So when you declare all praise goes to him, so you put no partner besides him. So this is the first condition you establish it to be him. Looked at.
Sorry, brother, I couldn't quite make it out. It was a bit muffled.
I'm very sorry, the mic was away. Just a second. I was saying that Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, it establishes God as the only God and taking no partners beside him when you direct all praise to Allah. So you fulfill the first commandment, which is a prerequisite to be heard and looked at.
MashaAllah. So to say in a different way, the last point I was making, it's like there's a commonality between both the deniers, if you will, or the astray, to use the terminology of this surah, between the astray and the guided. There's a commonality. First, the difference is like one of them seeks God for guidance, the other does not and goes astray. One of them is bestowed favor upon by God, the other wrath befalls in absence of God's favor. One serves God alone, the other fails their servitude that's due. But the thing that's common is like God is gracious and merciful, obviously, but it's that more so that they're denying God's mercy by not seeking it from Him or not seeking His guidance. So they're blocking it from themselves. So even that's kind of not common at the level of implementation upon them, ultimately. But the one that's really common in all like equivalence is not equivalence, but truly as common is ruler of the day of judgment. So they all have, they're all under God's rule equally. One is just acknowledging that and
It
taking
also
the right orientation. Sorry, and the other is just not doing so.
I think I was lagging. It also reminds me of the verse that God did not create human and jinn other than to serve him, and that also like recognizing it, following it, doing it is submission, and doing anything other than that is what causes you to become angered upon and astray.
Brother Musa, I'd like to mention also other reasons why you may not be guided. Not only because you not ask for it, because sometimes Allah guides people who don't necessarily specifically ask for guidance, maybe. But anyways, there's also what prevents you from being guided. For example, Allahu la yahdi al-qawm al-zalimin, Allahu la yahdi al-qawm al-fasiqin. So if you are among these, then you cannot be guided. This is a rule that is not overruled by God's mercy. Allah guides whom He wants, but this rule is established. If you are unjust, you can't be guided. But maybe you're somebody that is righteous, maybe He sent them somebody they accept as a bringer of the truth.
Yeah, it's definitely makes sense. For me, it's kind of like at the core level, they're still incongruent, meaning like somebody who is wronging or defiant or denying who God does explicitly says he does not guide those people. They're the exact people I think who would not seek guidance or not truly do so.
The thing is, brother, that to reach the conclusion that guidance should only come from God is not something so easy to reach, even and if it wasn't for God's guidance. So if it wasn't for al-Fatihah, where there is so much highlight that the first thing you should ask for is guidance, not anybody would have reached this conclusion. Like Abraham, when he turned to God in the he's turning to God, that he is the one who is going to guide him. That is something very, very special. Like if you have left humanity by themselves, they may not have learned it, but it took it's until Abraham passing all of these tests, being on a fitra, like how a human should have dealt, how he should have thought, what he should have looked, how he should have interpreted the signs, to lead him to the conclusion that he should only ask God for guidance, that nothing else will give him such guidance. But we have it very easy. It's right there. You should ask for guidance every day. But despite billions of people repeating this every day, there are many, many reasons why not all of them are guided.
Yep, mashallah. So the other thing I commented on was how the surah, while not making so explicit maybe throughout it, it has a striking emphasis on God alone, pretty much in every verse, explicitly or implicitly. His oneness, if you will, and its implications. Specifically, like, just to give a very brief summary again, I kind of say these points, but all praise is God's, meaning there is no other entity worthy of praise. He's the source of mercy, basically. Judgment is His alone. He alone we serve, and Him alone we ask for help. We seek guidance from Him, and without Him we would be astray, just to put it very briefly. So each time kind of concerned His oneness, concerned emphasis on God alone in some form or not, or another, I should say. Actually, also, Brother Saud adds the point related that I do like the point that the essential message of Surah al-Fatihah is the core fundamental essence of monotheism. And then the AI says that Surah 1 is almost like a compressed theology of Tawheed in motion, not only saying God is one as an abstract claim, it shows what God's oneness does to the servant. It says all praise returns to God alone because He is Lord of everything, Lord of the beings or worlds, etc. Actually, that's also a good rational explanation. All worship is directed to God alone because He alone is merciful or source of mercy and the owner of judgment. Same thing, all help is sought from God alone because He's the source of it and it cannot be self-produced. Same thing for the guidance. He alone is asked for guidance because without His guidance, one is left straying. Same thing for the favor versus the wrath. Without His favor, one remains under wrath while still under His rule. So we have in one brief surah, basically God alone is praised, God alone is served, God alone is relied upon, asked for help, God alone guides, God alone bestows favor, and without His favor or guidance, there's only straying and wrath. So any points to add to this idea?
Yes, in addition to establishing Tawheed in the beginning of the surah, only God is one, the believers recognize that people are different.
Wait, your
Sorry,
mic
brother,
is
the
off.
mic is, yeah.
Very sorry for this. In addition to the beginning of the surah, establishing the oneness of God, and also at the end, it acknowledges that the people are different. There are those who have been favored and those who are cursed. They have anger upon them, and those who are astray.
Yeah, almost like you have the oneness of God, absolute one, and then you have people who have two possible paths, either with God or without, so to speak. Not that they can escape God, which is part of the point. And Brother Saud adds the point, since God is completely transcendent, we connect to Him through our relationship with Him, thus rendering God as entirely immanent and visible in all things, which is basically what I think the attributes of Him being emphasized as the apparent and the unapparent connects to. So any other thoughts or points unrelated, because this was my last reflection, I think. Okay, if not, we can end a bit early because I do have to get ready anyway for my class. So peace
Well,
to
there are
everyone. Until
always
next time.
new lessons to learn every time from this surah, the more you reflect upon it. So it doesn't mean we have covered everything, but any topic that you address it to it, you may find signs in it.
Alhamdulillah, very true. So peace to everyone. Until next time, inshallah. Next time we have Surah al-Baqarah, chapter 2, on 2 days from now, I believe. So peace to everyone. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you so much. See you on Saturday, inshallah. Salam.